Good morning. How you guys doing? It's Will, just in time prepping. We're story time with Will. As you know, we do it on Tuesdays. And if you're not keeping up with the story, maybe you should. You can look in my playlist and it'll show you exactly every chapter we've read up to now and you can catch up. But for now, we're going to go ahead and start section 2 of chapter 10, exactly where we left off last week, and it is getting good. So here we go. It was a long day for Angela. The slow going made her grit her teeth in frustration and then curse aloud as she spent the entire morning creeping west. She squeezed through whenever she could, gently pushing doghouses, a dumpster, furniture, and cars aside, and it pained her to see whole blocks still decorated for the holiday. The pavement everywhere was cracked, full of weeds and potholes, and she found herself listening for the hit that would give her the first flat tire of her journey. She began to ease through muddy yards to avoid the glass that littered the streets, and then berated herself for only making 2 miles in 4 hours. More than once she found her way completely blocked and had to drive through fences, wincing at every snap of wood, plastic, and bone. Angela felt too exposed as she traveled through the riot-ravaged areas that she had known for before the war. Everything was so different, so dangerous that she would never have recognized the towns if she hadn't been there before. Doubts about her ability to make the trip hit her hardest as she paused through Cheviot, Ohio. It scared her, shook her up more than dealing with Warren, and her dreams were filled with it when she finally slept. Angela tried to steel herself as she entered the city limits, assuming it would be as bad as her own neighborhood, but it was worse. She cried as she drove, tears blurring the awful scene, but not enough. Not enough. The medical salves under her nose pushed back the stench, but again, not enough, and the gritty wind gusted harder. Half of the buildings were gone, burned down to charred, blackened frames. Those that did remain had no windows, no doors. The main street was crammed with abandoned cars and wrecks, but the corpses made her heart ache. There were so many. Had no one in this small city found safety? Angela wiped at her face, steering carefully around the blackened shell of the Army transport truck, the driver's uniform body still rotting inside. She sucked in horrific breaths as she cleared out the vehicle, now able to see what remained of the small municipal building. Only the tall pillars still stood, the wide field of rubble behind it unrecognizable, and the tears came harder at the sight of so many who represented authority decaying on those charred stone steps. Police, soldiers, and citizens lay in a tangled heap. The scene was gruesome. Fishtailing suddenly on the ice, Angela hit the brakes too sharply and slid on the slushy side street. Her front tire slammed into the curb hard enough to throw her against the seat, and the scare allowed her to get control of herself. She wiped her eyes again, concentrating on the quiet rumble of the engine, and after a moment she felt better. She started to reverse, but something changed in the air suddenly. It was different, and she turned off the heater to listen as she swept the area intently. She heard something. Not a threat, the witch informed her, settling back just more starving people. They were close watching Angela, and Angela could feel it. And she put the blazer in park. She climbed into the rear seat, ignoring the greed inside that was insisting she couldn't spare anything. Yes, I can, but in her heart she knew she had only delayed the inevitable, and she hated the guilt she was feeling for leaving them here to die. But they can search the stores, and the old Angela didn't understand why will they die. Because they're sheep, the witch answered sleepily. Without a shepherd, they'll stay out in the cold and freeze to death. They've lost their strength. Those who cannot find hope will not survive. Those words pulled at Angela, echoed in her bitter heart. Kenny had obviously found his reason to fight Charlie's dreams, and they were full of people they'd joined. She knew they were going to Montana, and it made her stomach burn to wonder what kind of sorry bastard was in charge of her child. She didn't trust Kenny's judgment at all, and she paid little attention to her son's inexperienced expressions. No one Ken approved of could be good. Being cautious, Angela drove slowly past long gravel driveways surrounded by the pine trees and knee-high shrubs gone wild from the lack of care. The houses on the outskirts gave her no comfort as she left the ghost town behind. They were sprawling beasts with paint-chipped porches and unattended lawns, their fields ready to be planted. Their two-car garages would likely hold one white or red Ford Crown Victoria and one midnight blue 1966 Starfire, or some other unknown treasure that would now wait forever for its owner to lovingly restore it. The most common hobby in this area, there were no signs of normal life or any other life here. Angela took her first break around 4, pulling behind a faded billboard that warned buzzard driving was still drunk driving, and she smirked at the irony as she lit a joint. It didn't matter now, probably hadn't before as much as the government had made out. Like every plant in nature, marijuana had its purpose. Right now, it was keeping her calm, steadying her resolve, and she was glad she'd found the big garbage bag in one of her neighbor's apartments. She was terrified, but there was no way she'd ever turn back and live with herself. Knew it for sure as she sat on the warm blood, sweater pulled tight. Her firstborn son was out here somewhere in hell, and she would find him or die trying. That is the second part, and we're going to go into the third part. We're 7 minutes in. Angela made camp her first night in an unturned cornfield lined with patches of black ice and small, dirty snowdrifts. It was about a half mile from the jammed-up lanes of Interstate 74. The brown, brittle stalks didn't quite come up to the roof, but when she threw a side dark tarp over the top of the car, scattering slushy snow on it, the vehicle blended in. She immediately felt better as darkness rolled over the broken land. Angela went to the area she had driven through, straightening rows until the path was normal again, gaze darting seriously at every small sound of the shift of the shadows. She didn't detect any insects or other wildlife, not even ants crawling over the dirt as she set up camp. She did hear a robin, but was unable to pinpoint its exact location by the weak call. Things were no better here than what she'd left behind. Only getting out what she needed for dinner, Angela moved quickly and quietly, listening hard, nursing a smashed thumb and a sore finger that she'd pulled a large splinter from after making her fire and hanging the tarp. She left the rear hatch open. With the ends of the wide tarp hanging onto the ground, she was almost completely shielded from the road. The sandwiches were gone quickly, as was the light, and she sat on the tailgate, surrounded by pillows, sipping a hot cup of chamomile and relaxing. The warmth of the heater pushed back a little of the loneliness, and she drank her tea, watching the last of a vivid green sunset. She hadn't heard anyone on the CB, just gunshots in the distance that made her drive faster, and she hadn't expected to. But not seeing any people, at least not any alive, had bothered her too. When she filled in the page on her journal from now on, she would include how many people she saw on the way and what each town was like. She wasn't sure why she wanted to do it, but instinct told her she should, and so she would. In this new world, instincts were a defense that had to be used. Though she'd only come 8 miles, it was a start. enough to drive it home, and once she found Charlie, there would be a price to pay for leaving when her man had made it clear he wanted her to stay and wait for him no matter what. Until the war, she had never even considered disobeying Kenny. They had a deal, and he got mean when she broke the rules. He would be pissed about her leaving, but about her calling Mark, Kenny would be furious and blood would be spilled like hers. Kenny would never believe anything she offered as an explanation, and she would have to warn Mark that it might come down to real violence. It was only fair he knew what he was getting into. Where was he now? You can open the door the witch tried to seduce, but Angela didn't. Not because it was wrong, but because part of her was too excited, couldn't wait to see him again. What if she had feelings? Not only would it complicate everything, but it was also had a mortal sin to long for a man while still firmly attached to another. Angela told herself she was eager because it meant getting up to her son, and she was finally able to sleep. Her dreams were not easy, though. She haunted with visions of her son, gone forever, and her being left to spend eternity searching New America wastelands for him. Morning's arrival was a relief. And that is the end. We're going to stop at 11 minutes this morning because we're going to start a new chapter next week. It's going to be Chapter 11, Dangerous Secrets. And it's going to be taking place February 10th. So if you guys really like the story, you're going to have to keep coming back. We've got a ways to go and a short time to get there. So hope you guys enjoyed the video this morning. The story, actually. It's getting pretty intense from when it first started. It was a little bit slow in the beginning, but now it's picking up the momentum. So if you haven't been listening, go back and start at the beginning, come back up and catch up. And I'll be seeing you guys next week. Hey, don't forget about the darn live stream in the morning, because we're going to have some fun. Bring a lot of your friends. We had 2 drawings last week. I'd like to do that same thing again this week. We had 2 lucky winners last week. We could do it again this week if we just get the people in there. That's all I got to say. You guys know I love you more than anything in the whole darn world. God bless you, God bless me, and God bless USA. See you out there.